actions related to the May 2020 riots. We know you have questions. We have questions. Please hold your questions till the end, and we'd be happy to entertain them at that time. I've practiced criminal law here in Travis County for 26 years. Previously served as an assistant county attorney, an assistant district attorney, and a special assistant United States attorney. Ken has been practicing for 15 years like me. He's also alumni of the Travis County Attorney's Office and the Travis County District Attorney's Office. While Ken was at the DA's office, he spent 3.5 years in the officer-involved unit. And specifically, he investigated law enforcement misconduct and presented police officer cases to the grand jury. We don't work for the Austin Police Association. We don't work for the law enforcement union. We're in private practice. Each of the officers we represent have sought us out and asked for our representation. We don't just represent police officers, we represent regular citizens from all across Central Texas. We also currently represent other officers who've been indicted by Jose Garza. This includes Officer Chris Taylor, former Williamson County deputies Zach Camden and J.J. Johnson, along with Officer Chance Bretches. We currently represent 8 officers who have been indicted in relation to the riots. We represent additional officers that we believe the district attorney is targeting in relation to the riots. However, those cases have not yet been presented to the grand jury. The officers we represent are as follows. Sergeant Josh Blake. Sergeant Blake has served Austin for over 20 years and is currently assigned to the SWAT team. Sergeant Stan Vick. Sergeant Vick has served for 16 years with APD and is currently assigned to Internal Affairs. Sergeant Brett Tableroo. Sergeant Tableroo has served Austin for 19 years and is assigned to Sector Investigations. Corporal Ed Boudreau. Corporal Boudreau has been with APD for almost 15 years. He's assigned as a patrol corporal. Corporal Christopher Irwin. Corporal Irwin is a 9-year veteran of APD. He currently serves as a patrol corporal. Senior Police Officer Justin Berry. Officer Berry has served for more than 14 years. He's currently assigned to the Special Events and Emergency Management Division. Senior Police Officer Eric Heim. Officer Heim is a 7-year officer who's currently assigned as a background investigator. Senior Police Officer Jeff Tang. Officer Tang has served Austin for over 5 years and is currently assigned to patrol. All of these officers are experienced, professional officers, some of the finest that have been able to serve our community. Each of these 8 officers are charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault by a public servant. These are first-degree felonies. Ken will go into greater detail about the indictment specifics. The majority of our cases stem from when our clients were ordered to clear the I-35 bridge and remove protesters from the highway. When indictments are issued, it automatically triggers a capias, which is a type of warrant. That happened in this case. Each of our clients reported to the Travis County Jail. They were fingerprinted, photographed, and released on a $1 cash deposit bond. There are no additional bond conditions. Our understanding is our clients will be placed on administrative duty. They'll continue to be paid by the Austin Police Department, but they won't be conducting law enforcement duties. We don't think specific administrative assignments have been made yet, but some of the normal administrative duties they might be assigned to are answering 311 calls, processing Crime Stoppers tips, caring for the horses of the mounted patrol. In other words, they're off the street, they're not conducting law enforcement activities. It's also our understanding that our clients will not be called as witnesses in any pending case until these indictments are resolved at trial. We don't yet know if there are criminal prosecutions that will be affected by this decision. Each of our clients was cleared by internal affairs. And you heard last week both the city manager and Chief Judge Acone state that they felt like these indictments are wrong. You also heard Chief Chacon acknowledge that the equipment the department issued our officers was defective. Turn it over to Ken.
As Doug mentioned, our clients, to our knowledge, have been charged with aggravated assault. We have not yet seen the indictments and anticipate those being released tomorrow. There are two versions of aggravated assault. One is using or exhibiting a deadly weapon, and the other is if you cause serious bodily injury. We believe all of them were charged with the deadly weapon version. We do not know whether everybody or some were charged with causing serious bodily injury. This is normally a second-degree felony, but if committed in the course of their duties as law enforcement, it becomes a first-degree felony, punishable by 5 to 99 years or life in prison. Our officers faced exceptionally challenging circumstances during the protests and what would become riots. They were tasked with keeping the city safe, themselves safe, property safe, but allowing as much as possible the peaceful protests to continue. Our officers worked as many as 12 straight days, up to 120 hours of overtime, in addition to the normal shift hours they would otherwise work. They were asked a tremendous amount. During their work with the riots, our officers were struck with frozen water bottles filled with urine, glass bottles, rocks, exploding fireworks, and one Molotov cocktail which was attempted to be thrown but was caught before it was lit and thrown. One of our officers was struck upwards of 15 times. He simply lost count how many times he was hit. During these challenging days, sometimes the acts were protests. Sometimes the acts were a protest with some violent individuals, and sometimes the protest evolved into a full-blown riot. Now, riot is defined in the law. It is defined as the assemblage of 7 or more persons resulting in conduct which creates an immediate danger of damage to property or injury to persons, substantially obstructs law enforcement or other governmental functions or services, or by force, threat of force, or physical action deprives any person of a legal right or disturbs any person in the enjoyment of a legal right. Multiple times, sometimes for long durations, over the course of the protests, you had a legal riot. Despite this fact, efforts were continued to be made to allow the peaceful protesters to assemble and protest. The use of beanbag rounds were targeted in order to discourage people who would become violent or who were being violent to continue their activities. The use of these rounds therefore allowed other persons who were protesting peacefully to continue to do so. When it became too much, for example, when I-35 became blocked in both directions, this obviously couldn't continue forever. Decision was made to deploy gas and smoke to clear the bridge, to allow traffic to resume, to allow people to go on their lives, to allow emergency services vehicles to pass back and forth. Multiple orders were given, verbally, microphones, patrol car vehicles, the LRAD, long-range acoustical device, as well as the police helicopter. The individuals who left the bridge after being ordered to do so remained safe. The individuals who unlawfully remained on the bridge, despite the multiple orders, placed themselves in danger. When the smoke and gas was deployed to clear the highway, some individuals attempted to prohibit these devices from working properly, and one went so far as to pick one up and throw it back at the police officers. Those individuals who went for the canisters, either to prevent them from working to clear the bridge or to use them as weapons back toward the police officers, they were targeted with beanbag rounds, and they were targeted to prevent them from following through with these acts. The decision to impact these people with beanbags was ordered or otherwise authorized by the highest levels of APD command, in full view of chain of command up to and including Chief Manley and current Chief Chacon. The point we'd like to make here is that these aren't a few rogue officers doing what they wanted to do. The actions they took on the bridge, deploying the beanbags, were in full view of the chain of command. They were commonly accepted tactics and a proper use of the beanbag that you can find anywhere across this country. It is not an illegal act to use the beanbag round in this capacity. District Attorney Garza admits to us he is unable in some circumstances to determine which officer struck certain persons with the beanbags. And in response to this situation, Mr. Garza simply indicted every officer who possibly fired in that direction. This is broad overreach. Lastly, potentially what's even more troubling to us than the sheer number of indictments is the information that we have that investigators from the Austin Police Department, trainers, use of force experts, people with decades of knowledge in this area were systematically excluded from conveying this information to the grand jury. If you control the presentation of information to the grand jury and you exclude information that may help officers, that may help explain this is proper procedure, this is common usage, this is the correct training and the correct use, this is what you get. You get indictments of 19 officers that never should have happened. We look forward to representing these officers and have the day in court.
So I'll brief you on what the road ahead looks like. Each of our clients have a court date set already. It's a very, very preliminary court date. Nothing significant will happen during that initial appearance, with one exception. At the very first court setting, we'll be asking to go onto the jury trial docket. Because of the COVID backlog and our courthouse remaining closed, we think these trials are over a year away. A couple administrative notes. If you're not on our media distribution list, please check with Ashley before you leave. We also have a press packet for you that includes the spelling of the names of the clients. We're happy to try to answer some questions, but keep in mind we are limited to some degree about what we can say in the open public, and we haven't seen any of the evidence yet.
What do you say to critics who say that these officers shouldn't have, fired these beanbag rounds, regardless of, whether these were defective and caused, as a reason they caused serious injury?
The use of the beanbags in this case is entirely appropriate. It's consistent with not only training within the department, but within other law enforcement agencies across the country. If there is an issue with the use of beanbag rounds in this situation, that needs to be handled on a different level. It is unfair and entirely improper to use criminal indictments to try to affect some sort of a change in a use of force policy.
There very well may be righteous civil law, civil personal injury cases. That's not what's going on here. These are criminal indictments where these officers face up to 99 years or life in prison. Next question.
Yes, sir. Excuse me if I've already addressed this under the few minutes late, but what will be the status of the officers now while they're awaiting trial over a year away? Will they make a
Yeah. So these officers will be placed on paid administrative duty. They will be off the streets. They'll continue to receive their APD paycheck, but they won't be taking any law enforcement actions.
Were any of the officers injured during these?
Yes.
How many of them?
We're still gathering that data, but more than just a few.
Were any of your clients injured?
Yes.
Yes.
How many?
We believe all except one, and the one who was not injured managed to, in his words, bat away the rocks that were thrown in his direction before he got struck.
Any hospitalized?
Not that we're aware of at this point, but understand a lot has happened between last Friday and today. We're still getting to know our clients and gathering information from them.
I know there were more officers or additional officers indicted. Is there any particular reason you're representing this 8?
These are the 8 clients that hired us.
You talked about the aggravated assault charges. Do you have any reason to believe that those 8 clients or any of the others you're representing are facing additional charges beyond aggravated assault, or could be?
Not at this time, but we would never have predicted 19 indictments for a proper use of force, so it's difficult for us to predict the next steps from Garza's office.
Are any of the clients you're representing kind of up the chain of command beyond the patrol officers who would have been firing the weapons?
Yeah, we represent 3 sergeants, 2 corporals. Those are all supervisors within the Austin Police Department.
I know at least one of the names on your client list is indicted on something that happened in 2019. Are there any additional implications regarding that as to how that would play out in this scenario?
I think you're referring to Chance Bretches. Officer Bretches was not indicted, or at least I'll say has not been indicted yet, in relation to his acts and enforcement in the riots.
Are the 19 indictments exclusive to the officers who were using the beanbag shotguns?
We can only speak to the 8 clients that we represent, but not all of our clients actually fired beanbag rounds. Some authorized or gave orders to do so, but did not do so themselves.
How many more officers beyond the 19 who are indicted do you anticipate could also be indicted or going through this process right now?
Are you asking how many more officers may be indicted?
Yeah.
We have no idea. I think part of the problem is you have Mr. Garza reviewing body-worn camera videotape, finding incidences that he believes are objectionable, and adding people to the list. And so we have no idea how broad this could be.
You mentioned certain people were left out of the grand jury process. Guessing, weapons experts that might have been able to talk about the beanbag rounds being defective. If they were included, do you think that would have made much of a difference in this case?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Some of the protesters say that they were not throwing anything at police officers and they were struck and injured. In one case, a woman said that she was assisting a teenager who had been struck. What do you guys have to say about the protesters being
That's super regrettable. It is very much likely that that action or incident could be the basis for a personal injury lawsuit. But if you're on I-35, where the police have given you orders to leave, and beanbag rounds are being fired, it's certainly regrettable, but it's not a criminal act.
Have you had any interactions with the DA's office since this has come about?
A couple brief conversations, but nothing significant.
More about procedural matters to the warrants and the jail bookings and
Is that typical in a situation like this?
Yeah.
yes.
Do you believe these charges are times for political reasons or any other reasons?
Were you asking it, do I believe these
Yeah.
charges are political?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In what way?
Well, Jose Garza ran on a campaign pledge of targeting police officers, and we're seeing that play out. And keep in mind, these indictments were announced somehow on the same day the city announced settlements of 2 personal injury lawsuits from the riots. You're asking me to believe that that's a coincidence, and I simply don't.
The cause numbers for some of these cases start in 20, indicating it was opened in 2020 with the clerk's office who assigned the number. Others went up to 2022. So it shows that these office has been sitting on some of these for 2 years, and just so happened to time the release of the indictments the same day as the settlements were announced.
I've never seen something like that happen in 26 years of practicing law in our courthouse.
Is it correct to say that each of these officers you're representing is facing 5 years to life?
Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but also a potential fine up to $10,000.
Are there any legal avenues open to you? I'm not sure what they would be as you represent your defendants, perhaps in a civil avenue that y'all are considering.
Don't understand the question.
Are there any opposing legal avenues you all could take in representing your client, boss?
All we can say at this time is we will explore all options.
You mentioned one officer was struck 15 times. What was he struck with?
The items on the list. So the list of items that I represent wasn't broadly stated. This came from the 8 officers that we represent. These are the objects that they know they were struck with. And some of them simply have no idea what they were struck with, but were struck with some sort of object, whether it was once or multiple times.
Mayor Steve Adler had a markedly different response to this announcement than Spencer Crump or Chief Chacon did. What's your message to?
Yeah, so our mayor is, I understand, a lawyer, and I think perhaps he was sleeping during constitutional law class. You don't have a constitutional right to throw rocks, bottles, bricks at police officers.
So just to clarify, you didn't know that in some cases maybe protesters didn't throw anything. If that's the case, you would still say not an illegal act. Is that in part because their supervisors were telling them this is how they should be, your clients were telling them this is how they should be responding?
We're only aware of a certain level of detail of the accusations against our clients. So we're just not in a position to answer that question specifically because the discovery process has not started, meaning we have not been provided the information, evidence, materials possessed by the DA's office.
Can you expand a little on what you said earlier about DA Garza saying, maybe acknowledging that according to you that he didn't know, they're not sure in some cases who struck who and yet they indicted everyone. Can you just expand on that?
Sure. A procedural part of this process after being indicted like these officers were is for the indictment to go to a judge who then sets a bail amount and authorizes a capias or a warrant. Normally, a probable cause affidavit accompanies an arrest, and this is a summary of the incident from the officer's standpoint that the judge uses to set an appropriate bail amount. Now, because these cases were not on-scene arrests, because they were indictments issued by a grand jury first, the judge is sort of left in the dark about the specific factual allegations. So to fix that situation, it's the common practice for the DA's office to draft a summary of what they believe the evidence is. And that's where we got this information, that the DA's office has admitted in some circumstances it has been unable to determine who impacted a certain individual with a beanbag, and in response, simply indicted everybody who shot in that person's direction.
Is that a summary provided to you all but not made public?
That's correct.
And you did say your clients got bonded out, right?
They their bail was set at $1, and we posted their $1 bail for them, and they were processed in and out
By whom?
by the Travis County Sheriff's Office.
Do y'all believe that there were some officers who led to some protesters being hospitalized, sent some protesters to the hospital who have not been indicted?
I'm not aware of, not that we're aware of.
We don't have that level of information at this point.
Was the indictment exclusive to those who were armed with the beanbag shotguns?
Some of the indictments were for supervisors who authorized or ordered certain uses of the device.
But those charges are also aggravated assault.
That's correct.
Could you, just a little basic clarification, did they appear before the sheriff's office yesterday? Did they go through the standard procedure, fingerprinting, gunshots?
So some of our clients were processed through the Travis County Jail on Friday. Others finished up this morning, and they all went through the standard procedures of mugshot, fingerprint, a lot of paperwork, and then we posted $1.
There were many other protests in other cities while all this was going on. Do you know, have other officers in other cities been indicted? Do you know?
You know, we're pretty busy with our own caseloads.
I understand. I just thought you might have heard and checked.
No.
Okay.
You mentioned the majority of the cases stem from the order to clear the Interstate 35 bridge. Can you provide more details on that order?
Yeah. Let me make sure I was talking with precision. What I said was the majority of our cases. So the majority of our 8 clients, their indictments, we believe, relate to their actions clearing I-35. Does that help?
Yeah, where was, specifically, what was the intersection that they were ordered to clear?
I don't know, but you know, there's drone footage on the internet. You can see the officers on the bridge facing protesters and some rioters, and then you can see from that drone footage smoke and gas are deployed, and the vast majority of the crowd dissipates.
It was at APD main headquarters, so if it wasn't at 7th Street, it was very near.
I know you represent multiple clients, but just overall and generally, what have been your clients' reactions to being charged?
Horrified, demoralized. They're worried about their families. They're worried about their future.
Unable to understand how they could be charged with a first-degree felony for carrying out duties they were ordered to do, that were commonly taught and accepted, and within full view of the entire chain of command. And I'll add, potentially, city management as well.
Can you, sorry I said this before, can you confirm that none of your clients faced any discipline from APD? That all that internal review was over as far as you know before this happened?
We can confirm that, yes.
Until potential acquittal, your clients cannot get overtime or be promoted or anything else like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is there anything else that they're limited to doing they otherwise would be?
There may be, and we just might not know about it because we're not police officers.
Are there travel restrictions?
There are no travel restrictions related to the bond at all. There are no restrictions on the bonds.
And understand that potentially could change. This is for Chief Chacon to decide. And to his credit, he has not suspended them. He has kept them on the payroll, but just not put them in what we would call enforcement positions where they're in the public taking police actions of that nature.
Again, will they be able to, since they're charged and not convicted, will they still be able to vote in the present election?
Yes, they will.
We can hang around for a little bit if you have additional questions. Ashley has a press packet for you with the correct spelling of our clients' names and some additional information about their careers. We've also provided you with a few photographs of damage and evidence of violence that comes from many of your colleagues in the media. And we're happy to continue to communicate with you as we go through this process. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm John Dayton. Representative New York Times here.